The old apartment building had character. It stood tall and proud, a relic of a bygone era, with its vintage facade and intricate architectural details that whispered stories of the past. The bricks, weathered by time, seemed to hold secrets within their cracks, and the windows, though dusty, offered glimpses into a world long forgotten. Emily felt it the moment she moved in. High ceilings that seemed to stretch endlessly, dark wood that exuded a sense of history and mystery. The apartment was a blend of elegance and decay, a place where time had left its mark in the most beautiful way. The floors creaked under her feet, each step echoing through the empty rooms, as if the apartment itself was acknowledging her presence. The scent of stale air filled her nostrils, a mix of dust and age that was oddly comforting. It was as if the apartment was breathing, its walls inhaling and exhaling the memories of those who had lived there before. Dust particles danced in the dim light, creating a surreal atmosphere that made Emily feel like she had stepped into another world. It was charming, in a forgotten kind of way. The furniture, though old and worn, had a certain elegance to it. The decor, nostalgic and quaint, spoke of a time when life was simpler, slower. Emily could almost hear the laughter and conversations that once filled these rooms, the echoes of a past that was both distant and near. But as the days passed, Emily noticed something else. Whispers. Faint and indistinct, they seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. At first she thought it was her imagination, the product of an overactive mind in a new and unfamiliar place. But the whispers persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing night. They seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The old wallpaper, peeling and faded, seemed to ripple with the sound, as if the very fabric of the apartment was alive and speaking to her. Emily would press her ear against the walls, trying to make out the words, but they remained elusive, just out of reach. The whispers came late at night, when the world outside was silent and still, and the only sound was the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. It was in these quiet moments that the whispers were the loudest, weaving through the darkness like a ghostly melody. Just as Emily drifted off to sleep, the whispers would begin. Soft and chilling, they would weave through her dreams, turning them into a tapestry of fear and curiosity. She would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding, the whispers still echoing in her ears. She'd hear them, soft and chilling, weaving through her dreams. They spoke of sorrow, of loss, of something trapped within the walls. The voices were filled with a sense of longing, a desperate need to be heard and understood. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the apartment was trying to tell her something, to reveal a secret that had been buried for years. They spoke of sorrow, of loss, of something trapped. The whispers were like a haunting lullaby, lulling her into a state of unease. She could almost see the ghostly figures that the voices belonged to, their shadowy forms moving through the apartment, trapped in a never-ending cycle of despair. Emily tried to ignore them. She told herself it was just the old pipes, the wind, her imagination playing tricks on her. But deep down, she knew there was something more, something that couldn't be explained away so easily. Tried to tell herself it was the old pipes, the wind, her imagination. She would lie in bed, listening to the creaks and groans of the old building, trying to convince herself that it was just the natural sounds of an aging structure. But the whispers were different. They had a purpose, a message that was meant for her. One night, lying in bed, Emily heard it. A knock. It was soft at first, hesitant, as if whoever was on the other side was unsure of whether to make their presence known. She sat up, her heart racing, straining to hear over the pounding in her chest. A knock. It was soft at first, hesitant. Then it came again, more insistent, more urgent. The sound echoed through the apartment, filling the silence with a sense of dread. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the knock was coming from the back of the apartment. Then it came again, more insistent, more urgent. It seemed to be coming from the back of the apartment, from the one room she hadn't fully explored. The room that always seemed colder, darker, as if it was hiding something. It seemed to be coming from the back of the apartment, from the one room she hadn't fully explored, the room that always seemed colder, darker, as if it was hiding something. Emily's curiosity was piqued, but so was her fear. She had always felt a strange energy emanating from that room, a sense of foreboding that kept her from venturing inside. From the one room she hadn't fully explored, the room was filled with old, cluttered furniture, covered in dust and cobwebs. It was a place that seemed frozen in time, untouched by the years that had passed. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the threshold, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. Her curiosity warred with her fear. She knew she had to find out what was behind the door, what was causing the whispers and the knocks. But the thought of what she might find filled her with dread. Her curiosity warred with her fear. The whispers grew louder, urging her, it seemed, to investigate. They beckoned her toward the unknown, toward the source of the unsettling sound. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay beyond the door. The whispers grew louder, urging her, it seemed, to investigate. They beckoned her toward the unknown, toward the source of the unsettling sound. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay beyond the door. She turned the knob slowly, the creak of the hinges echoing through the silent apartment. They beckoned her toward the unknown, toward the source of the unsettling sound. As the door swung open, Emily was met with darkness, a void that seemed to swallow the light from the hallway. She stepped inside, her heart pounding, the whispers now a cacophony in her ears. She knew she was about to uncover the secret that had been hidden within the walls for so long. Emily rose from her bed. Her bare feet met the cold hardwood floor. She crept towards the sound, each step echoing in the silence of the apartment. The air grew colder as she approached the door. A strange chill ran down her spine. The knocking continued, rhythmic and demanding. Emily reached out a trembling hand and hesitated. What lay beyond the door? What awaited her in the darkness? Taking a deep breath, Emily pushed the door open. The room was dark, shrouded in shadows. The heavy curtains blocked out most of the moonlight, leaving only a faint glow to illuminate the space. Dust motes danced in the single ray of moonlight that pierced through a gap in the heavy curtains. The beam of light seemed almost magical, casting an ethereal glow on the dust particles as they floated lazily in the air. The air hung heavy and still, thick with the scent of decay and forgotten things. It was as if time itself had stopped in this room, leaving behind only the remnants of a life once lived. Emily stepped inside, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Each step she took seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying her growing sense of unease. She fumbled for the light switch. Her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. The sensation sent a shiver down her spine, and she hesitated for a moment, her breath catching in her throat. A chill shot up her arm and she pulled back her hand with a gasp. The coldness seemed to linger on her skin, a stark contrast to the oppressive warmth of the room. She found the switch. Flickering to life, the single bulb cast long, dancing shadows across the dusty furniture and shrouded objects. The light was weak and unsteady, but it was enough to reveal the room's hidden secrets. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and the furniture was covered in a thick layer of dust. It was clear that no one had been here for a very long time. Emily cautiously moved further into the room, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. She felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity, driven by an inexplicable need to uncover the room's mysteries. On a small table in the corner she noticed an old, dusty book. Its cover was worn and faded, but something about it drew her in. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the brittle pages. As she opened the book, she discovered pages filled with handwritten notes. The ink was faded, but the words were still legible, telling a story of a time long past. A sense of realization and wonder washed over Emily. She knew she had stumbled upon something significant, something that had been hidden away, waiting to be discovered. The room was sparsely furnished, with only the bare essentials scattered around. The air was thick with dust, and the dim light from a single bulb cast long, eerie shadows on the walls. A chipped vanity table stood against one wall, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. The table looked like it hadn't been touched in years, forgotten and neglected. Above it hung an ornate mirror, its silver frame tarnished with age. The intricate designs on the frame hinted at a time when it was a prized possession, now lost to time. The mirror was the only object in the room that seemed to gleam with an eerie internal light. It was as if the mirror had a life of its own, drawing attention to its mysterious glow. Emily's gaze was drawn to the mirror. She couldn't explain why, but she felt an irresistible pull towards it, as if it was calling out to her. It was as if it held her captive, its depths beckoning her closer. The more she stared, the more she felt like she was being drawn into another world, a world within the mirror. She took a step towards it, then another. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the air around her was thickening, making it harder to move. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and wide-eyed, but there was something off about it, something that made her heart race. The reflection seemed almost alive. The knocking came again, this time seemingly from within the mirror itself. It was a soft, rhythmic sound like someone gently tapping on glass, sending chills down her spine. Emily hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached out towards the mirror. She could feel the cold air emanating from its surface, a stark contrast to the warmth of the room. As her fingers made contact with the glass, a shiver ran down her spine. The surface felt strangely warm, almost as if it was alive, pulsing with an unseen energy. Emily gasped, pulling her hand back in shock. The mirror's surface rippled like water, distorting her reflection into something unrecognizable, something terrifying. A voice, thin and reedy, whispered from the mirror. "Help me!" it pleaded. "Please set me free!" Emily's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. Her reflection in the mirror, however, remained unchanged. It was still, unblinking, a stranger staring back at her. "Who's there?" Emily choked out, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" The voice whispered again, filled with a profound sadness. "I am trapped," it said. "Trapped within this prison of glass. Please, you must help me." Section 6. Trapped in the mirror. Emily's fear warred with a growing sense of pity. The voice, though eerie, held a note of desperation that she couldn't ignore. She cautiously approached the mirror, her hand hovering over its cold, smooth surface. "How can I help you?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. The reflection in the mirror shimmered. For a moment, Emily could have sworn she saw a figure standing behind her. A woman in a long, flowing gown, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with a desperate longing. Section 7. The Malevolent Shadow. As Emily stared, a shadow began to form within the depths of the mirror. It swirled and writhed, growing larger and more menacing with each passing second. The temperature in the room plummeted, and a wave of icy terror washed over Emily. The voice, which had been pleading before, now hissed with rage. "You should not have interfered," it snarled. "This is my domain now." The shadow lunged from the mirror, reaching for Emily with long, dark claws. Section 8. Darkness Consumes. Emily screamed and stumbled back, tripping over her own feet. The single light bulb flickered and died, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Emily lay on the cold floor, her heart pounding against her ribs, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She could hear the shadow moving around her, its raspy breathing sending shivers down her spine. The scent of decay intensified, choking the air around her. Emily scrambled back, her hands searching for anything to defend herself. Section 9. The Final Encounter. Then a hand closed over her mouth, stifling her scream. Emily's eyes widened in terror as she felt icy breath against her ear. "You are mine now," the voice whispered, cold and triumphant. "Trapped with me. Forever." The weight on top of her felt immense, crushing the air from her lungs. Emily thrashed against the unseen force, her struggles growing weaker. The last thing she saw before the darkness consumed her was the faint, eerie glow of the mirror, its surface reflecting not her image, but the grinning, triumphant face of the shadow.